Good evening, everyone. Let's see. My name is Alex Frost, project manager for the Mira Mesa Community Plan Update. Presenting with me today is Scott Sendell. He is a Parks and Public Spaces planner with the Planning Department. And I also have Claudia Brizuela, Senior Traffic Engineer from Sustainability and Mobility, and Alfonso Gastelum, Infrastructure Planner from City of San Diego Planning Department, and they're attending to answer any questions related to mobility and or infrastructure. So in terms of agenda, I will quickly go over some introduction and background and discuss the community discussion draft and figures just at a high level. And Scott will focus on Parks and Recreation as there are new information related to that topic. And I will wrap with Urban Villages and Community Plan Implementation Overlay Zone. Again, another new information for this committee, and we can have questions and answers and discussion. So in terms of high-level schedule, we launched this Mira Mesa Community Plan Update in fall of 2018, and we are now at spring of 2020. Community discussion draft has been released, and we are targeting a release of the draft plan and draft environmental impact report in summer, and hope to begin hearing process going to Planning Commission and City Council starting in fall of 2022. In terms of near-term milestones, today's meetings focused on community discussion draft. The next month's meeting in June, preliminary input on this draft, and we should have the mobility technical report available and the result of the school capacity analysis. And there will be a Planning Commission workshop to present similar information in June or July. And again, hope to release the draft program environmental impact report and draft plan in July, August timeframe, and hope to have another meeting with this committee and then targeting a final EIR, final draft plan in October. So this is the 28th meeting with the Mira Mesa Community Plan Update Advisory Committee meetings. We've had 6 events so far and 4 opportunities via online survey and stakeholder interviews for input, various technical studies and documents, more to come. And moving on to community discussion draft and figures. So the discussion draft is a preliminary draft of the update to the Mira Mesa Community Plan. It consists of draft plan elements or chapters that have been reviewed, discussed, developed over the course of multiple meetings with this committee and via workshops, surveys, and technical analysis. The discussion draft contains the community vision, goals, and policies, along with limited maps and graphics in the draft plan figures. The purpose of this draft is to provide the committee members and community stakeholders with a comprehensive understanding of the policies in the new community plan and provide an opportunity for community input on the refinement of plan policies. In terms of the structure or outline, there's 8 chapters with introduction, land use, economic prosperity, mobility, public facilities, historic preservation, parks, recreation, open space, and urban design, and urban villages and community plan implementation overlay zone. In terms of draft plan figures, the plan land uses and plan zoning is included. So zoning is to implement the plan. So typically a plan zoning map does not come out till when the EIR is released, but I have been getting a lot of requests, so we've included it early on. In addition, pedestrian facility classification and pedestrian improvements, plan bike transit vehicular networks, planned street classifications, existing and planned public services and facilities, existing and planned parks, recreation, open space, and the existing planned park and recreation facilities matrix or table. And there is an urban design framework and CPAWS diagrams for 7 different CPAWS areas or urban villages. So I'm going to pass it on to Scott now for him to discuss parks and recreation. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Alex. I'm going to make a brief presentation, and first off, I wanted to say that it's great to be back meeting with you all. I wanted to say that for the parks section, we're continuing to be all ears to get a little bit further input from you on parks. I'll touch on a few things and refinements that I plan to go over in the end that have got further to go, but with that, let's hit it. Alex, next slide. I thought I would start out with a little bit of kind of a primer on the Parks Master Plan and how it relates to Mira Mesa. Well, you know, it's been a while since we've been working on the Parks Master Plan. It was adopted last year. It's a long-range planning document, and you know, it was last updated in 1956, and a lot of things has changed. So next slide, I can go over some of the items that are new. So start out, Parks Master Plan, its location resides on the Park and Recreation Department's website. So you can go to that website and find it there. Next. Some of the things that I wanted to get into a little bit for Parks Master Plan are particular germane. The BMP kept its long-standing goals for the middle section there. You can see the black and white little infographic on some population-based parks standards that the Parks Master Plan didn't change is the recreation center and an aquatic center, that there's basically one 17,000 square foot rec center per each 25,000 residents and one aquatic complex per every 50,000. What did change a bit is the system of points as opposed to acreage, and we have 100 points of recreation value per 1,000 people. And a goal that the Parks Master Plan set is 100 acres of new population-based parkland in 10 years. And in general, throughout the city, our goals are a 10-minute walk to a recreation opportunity, a 20-minute bike ride to a park or opportunity, and a 30-minute transit ride at least to a regional park, a beach, a recreation center, and an aquatic complex. Next slide. Then further, if you, and I won't get into the matrix itself, but this is just a good place to point out that within the Parks Master Plan, there's some particularly good parts for people to go look at if you'd like. Appendix D is the recreation value scoring matrix that's new in the city. And it's quite detailed and hopes to avoid any detail problems or loopholes or anything like that. And you can see in Appendix E is the park scoring for sample community areas, so you can kind of see how it gets applied. Alex, next slide. A key element of the plan is an equity focus, and really what we mean by that is with the Park Need Index, what we'll be doing is we'll be looking at the development impact fee, and that's now a citywide fee. And through the plans, the resolution is to have 80% of park deficient communities receive the gift, the DIF funds, with at least 50% in communities concerned. So that's kind of where the goals for where park money will be going. And then with the next slide, I can see how, can try to illustrate with you how Mira Mesa applies or rates in terms of its, as of 2019, its ability to meet the standard. Because remember, you know, what we'll be doing is for park deficient communities, looking at these maps, and I know they're hard to read, so I kind of on the first one circled where Mira Mesa is, but they're color coded in terms of in the existing conditions report, how parkland on the left fared, how in the middle recreation centers fared, and then how aquatic centers fared. And so you can see on the one on the left, Parkland, Mira Mesa is a color that's kind of in the middle range. So it did meet park standard, really just the green communities, 4 communities, particularly in the city, met the standard. And by the way, those 4 communities that did meet the standard were used for the benchmark for the recreation value point system. So the recreation value point system is quite stringent, just like the acreage standard was. But then you can see on the middle map and the lower, or in the rather the left and the right and the middle map, how that red means that we're deficient in both recreation center and aquatic center. So that's where the application of that fee, the DIF fee, prioritization would come to benefit Mira Mesa. Next slide. Again, from the Parks Master Plan, we identified a few new things, some typologies in parks, different types of parks. Suffice to say, really just the highlights are the trailhead pocket parks and linear parks, which we propose a few of in Mira Mesa, and we'll get to those a little bit later. Next slide. Then I wanted to go ahead and to get into, this is the parks map. The map shows, you can see, hopefully, if you're not using your phone, you're using a relatively large screen, we can get it to a little bit later, but there's green asterisks shown for proposed parks. Many of those occur inside. You can see a little blue dash line. Those are the areas of supplemental development regulation. Again, we'll get into those a little bit later, those villages. But you can see not only the green asterisks for parks, but you can see little red dotted lines in different places. And those are new potential trails that we've identified and trailhead pocket parks at those. And then put the next slide. I can get into a little bit of the detail there with the legend on the parks matrix, but the parks matrix is 6 pages, I believe, 11 by 17 format. So there's quite a few, 60 something, 60 and counting park facilities that we're documenting, both proposed and existing. So the summary here is what you can see. The statistics for 2019 population, and then the plan horizon at 2050. And you can see the calculations per total population, the recreation value points goal of being 1,000 per person, what the goal is, and how it met in 2019. And on the right, my notes, the bullet points for are interesting. If you rated the 2019 and earlier level of existing parks with the legacy standard of acreage being the measure only, Mira Mesa met 65% of that standard. So it didn't mean it, but it got to 65%, which is not too unusual. It's kind of not too average, close to what the mean is in the city of San Diego's communities. And then, but with the park recreational value points scored a bit lower, 42%. And I can get into the detail on that with the next slide too, to give you some background information, why there's a little bit of difference there.
Before you go on, I'm just curious. So I saw this in there, and this would seem to be a big problem. This is the 2050 result with everything you have planned so far. Are there any plans to add additional facilities to make up that deficit?
Yes, and I'll get to that. I can get to that. Yeah, definitely. So what you'll see is that that bottom number there, where we are needing 17,400 points, right? And then from the line item above, where it says current existing recreational value points. So right, we were at 4,473, and then at plan build out, we'll have about 11,000 points. So more than double, less than triple the amount of points proposed versus what you see today. So with this next slide, I just wanted to underscore why Mira Mesa is not alone in how it did better on the acreage measure than the recreational value points. And this is a study from the Trust for Public Lands, which is a nonprofit, independent place, and they rated San Diego in general that for access and especially for acreage, we did fairly well for our parklands, and they don't really use too much on the regional park. They depend on community parks as well, like we do in the city of San Diego. And then they found out that there's 36% of the standard average mean for across cities. So with the next slide, then it gets into, and I can begin to talk about some of the parks that we can begin to add back in and start off with a couple parks that you're familiar with. On the right is a new park that will occur at Three Roots that will be open to the public. And then on the bottom is one that's planned for Stone Creek, which is a very conceptual plan, but that suffice to say that there's plan for 2 major parks, sizable parks to be in Stone Creek. And then an idea I have for Menkar Street, where we have an opportunity to use some underutilized public right-of-way to create a little small park and overlook. This block is really great because there's residential all around. And it has a great view of Los Pen. The next slide. Then, aside from acquiring and designing, the unfunded park improvements list, many of you on the Community Recreation Advisory Group are familiar with the unfunded park list, but those are things that the community has identified and Parks and Recreation has maintained a list of that are unfunded, that I just wanted to say that in the points that I created on the list, these unfunded park improvements I have not yet added into your park list. So those will be additions too. And I brought it here as a bullet point just to note that, but also to familiarize everybody that it'll build on some of the things I'm saying next in the next slides. So next slide. Then another thing that we want to do is with new development, we want to plan for parks close to those new residents. And we'll get into that. And these are some of the images that I'm repeating as a touchstone to earlier presentations where we talked about how development can provide small and medium-sized parks in their developments. Next slide. And then further, building on that, like the idea of the unfunded parks list, are there some other features that we want to add, similar to, like many things are being planned for Mira Mesa Community Park, right? So if there are other smaller neighborhood parks or existing facilities that need to have more features in them, please do take a look at the list that we've got together on our spreadsheet and get back with us with input on which parks might be more suitable than others for things, new play area, new dog park, different facilities that could fit. Next slide. And then also, I'm going to do my darndest, right, to get as many parks as we can, even with the limited land and availability we have. But where we still don't, if we still don't meet the standard, I would like to put in the plan. I'd like to get feedback on this. A few line items to the park list that say we'd like to identify land and acquire land for new parks, and then program and design and develop those parks, and list neighborhood type parks, community park type facilities that would have play fields and ball fields, tot lots, those kinds of bread and butter park facilities. At least have that, and not kind of artificially put those points into the mix. Have those points not yet be identified because we haven't identified land, but at least have those be there so that the plan can go through its environmental review with those potential parks in there. And that as funds become available for land acquisition, that there's a line item for there that while we haven't identified the sites, we do have the intention as an aspirational goal is to acquire park land. So that's kind of the summary of parks that I've got so far. There'll be more parks, especially with the community, the CPOD stuff, the supplemental development regulations that Alex is going to talk about next. But Alex, I'm going to hand it to you now.
Thanks, Scott. Now I'll briefly cover urban villages and CPODs.
Just a quick question. When can we make comments on the part that was just presented?
We can, we can go through my section and then we can have a robust discussion, or if you can make a note, Joe, is that okay? Unless you want to just bring up the question now.
Well, I have several comments, but go ahead and finish yours, Alex.
Okay, thank you. So this is an overview. Community Plan Implementation Overlay Zone, or CPAWS. Type A is applied to provide supplemental development regulations in urban villages. So it's the orange area in this map. And urban villages are future growth areas that are walkable and mixed use with ample public spaces for residents and employees. At least that's the vision. So the draft supplemental development regulations, or SDRs, it needs to be simple, easily understood by all, non-duplicative, does not repeat or conflict with other standards, objective, unambiguous in intentions, shapes behavior, not style. So aims above all to facilitate well-behaved buildings, is friendly to people, and enduring. Deliberately disregards fads and fleeting trends, or at least that's the intent. Here are highlights. Probably the 5 most common SDRs that we have. The first one is SDR1, Urban Village Parks. So for any new residential development on a site that's 2 acres or greater, or a project with a gross floor area of 75,000 square feet or more, shall provide publicly accessible park on site. So this is to really encourage any larger scale residential development in the future to provide parks on site rather than paying the fee. And in terms of SDR number 2, urban pathways. So this is just to provide enhanced pedestrian zone. And there is a figure here, wider sidewalk and a lot of trees and landscaping. In terms of SDR3, pedestrian pathways. So this is to provide pedestrian only pathways to provide additional access and connections where new streets or driveway is not feasible. And SDR4 is private street connections. So provide super block permeability to improve multimodal circulation. And then finally, SDR5, linear parks, provide passive or active recreation areas arranged parallel to public right-of-way. So here's the example we had presented before of a linear park. There's the privately owned public open space and a parallel to public right-of-way. And it can be fenced all the way through. And then there are some figures of real projects, pocket parks and linear parks in different parts of San Diego in the country. So in terms of, this is a diagram for Mira Mesa Town Center. So SDR1, Urban Village Park, the green asterisks. This new park location is conceptual because the trigger is 2 acres or more, or 75,000 square feet. So we can't quite say exact location, but we've identified potential locations. In terms of urban pathways, so this is the enhanced pedestrian environment, all the blue, light blue areas. And a lot of students, use this area. And in terms of the private street connection is in gray. So to make sure the super blocks and you have the multimodal circulation for people walking, biking, and driving, so maintaining that access point. And then the green line is linear park along Camino Ruiz, and then above along New Salem Street for any future redevelopment. And finally, pedestrian pathways connecting around Jollibee here to the Mira Mesa Community Park. So trying to create that pedestrian-friendly environment as new projects come forward in the future. So this is the first example for Mira Mesa Town Center. For Mira Mesa Gateway, we're proposing a pedestrian pathway. So behind Best Buy, there's an alley, and then the Caltrans park and ride, and connecting it with pedestrian bridge all the way to the Mira Mesa Market and also to Miramar College Transit Station in Miramar College. Really trying to enhance, it's very difficult to cross right now if you're in northern side of Mira Mesa Boulevard, trying to go to Mira Mesa Market. So this, we feel, is critical. Several urban village parks and green asterisks for potential future residential. We feel these sites would be the candidate that would trigger on-site requirement. In gray is private street connections. Again, splitting these super blocks, making sure there's multimodal circulation. And in blue is all the urban pathways, again, enhanced pedestrian sidewalk, double loaded corridors of trees. And in Linear Park, we found in Reichart here is a current kind of alley or pedestrian passageway that can be enhanced into Linear Park as this shopping complex potentially redevelops in the future. In terms of Plaza Sorrento, where Aldi resides, potential urban village location, urban pathways along Mira Mesa Boulevard and Camino Santa Fe, and then just private street connections to make it easier to walk, bike, or drive through this area. Barnes Canyon is, you see similar pedestrian pathways, the dotted lines, trying to create that access right now, especially for employees. You know, during lunch break, they can walk and go grab food at the food court or other restaurants, Gravity Heights. And so trying to enhance that connectivity, potential urban village park, if there's any new residential project, again, at larger scale, an urban pathway along Scranton Road and Barnes Canyon Road. Also, the light green is a widening the street on both sides. So we want to accommodate one additional lane as all of these properties redevelop. And finally, more urban pathways connecting the existing trail parallel to Water Ridge Townhomes. So just trying to enhance that walkability of the area for current residents and employees, but also future employees and hopefully residents. Pacific Heights Boulevard. So this is across Qualcomm's Pacific campus. We would really like to see similar sort of redevelopment. And so potential urban village park, if there's ever residential here, and then urban pathway or along Mira Mesa Boulevard and an access through the property with pedestrian pathway, and then just private street connections to improve vehicular circulation. And then Sorrento Mesa Rim, this isn't quite urban village. It's more of enhancing public space or amenities. So connecting the whole segment here with new trail, widened trail. And here's a picture here of existing kind of the widest segment by the Google office. And we'd like, the plan envisions that this is a standard as the properties along the Sorrento Mesa Rim redevelop, so we can have this incredible amenity for the community and connecting with existing Lopez Canyon Trail, the Goat Trail, and several new trailhead pocket parks along the way with pedestrian access pathways in various properties. And then finally, Miramar Gateway, large area with the proposed Stone Creek. So you can see the pedestrian pathways connecting Black Mountain Road to Clayton Street, and urban pathways along Black Mountain Road and Kearney Villa Road, again, enhancing that pedestrian environment, and a lot of trees. In the red is new trails and proposed trails that Stone Creek master planning process is envisioning, and really trying to improve access, circulation, and connectivity for people walking especially, but also driving, and private street connection, connecting Activity Road to Candida Street here and down south. So that's the preliminary proposal for supplemental development regulations. And in terms of next steps, at the June meeting, we'll come back and compile initial community input and hope to have a draft mobility technical report and the school capacity analysis. And this is between spring and summer of 2022 is we're looking to receive community input and hope to release the draft plan and draft program EIR in summer. So we'll be compiling all the inputs and then taking that, incorporating what's feasible and formatting into a proper draft plan and document. So targeting hearings in fall of 2022. So that's the schedule. And so now we can turn it over to questions, comments, and input.
Okay, so I have a few, but why don't we let Joe go first since he was waiting to ask his Parks question.
Well, I have some comments. One of the slides you had, it showed Mira Mesa in 2019, and the total was we were minus 3,135 points. But yet when you go to 2050, we more than double the population, and we basically double how much we're losing. So we're doubling our minuses. That doesn't say anything about how to take care of people. Mira Mesa doesn't have any free room anymore. Everything in Mira Mesa is built out. Linear Park is really nice. It looks good. It's 3 feet wide and 100 feet long, but it's only good if you drive by it. You can't have sports there. Stone Creek has a big park, but you will not have any scheduled events there because it's too small for even softball or any of those types of things. Getting back to the point system in the parks, if you put a water fountain in a park, you get a whole bunch of points for putting in a water fountain, which really doesn't benefit anybody to the point. Kids can bring their own bottles of water. The park master plan is taking the money from up here and trying to build parks down in other areas that are deficient. The problem there is that the reason the community is deficient is because south of Highway 8 is totally built out. And so the only way you're going to create parks down there is by buying houses up, getting rid of them, and then putting in a park. You're going to have to do the same thing in Mira Mesa to do all these enhancements you guys are talking about. The other thing is the park master plan, which is taking all this money from all the communities, doesn't even have a plan for what they want to do. There's no park scheduled, nothing on the drawing board, nothing. They just want to take all this money. And you know what happens when politicians get a whole bunch of money. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, I concur in all of that. I think we have to see something real here to put in the community plan that we'll buy more land if land and money become available. It's just not acceptable. There's not going to be a better time to identify land that could potentially be acquired than there is now. We are very deficient here in these points, even in the new system. The parks at Three Roots and at Stone Creek are part of our current community plan. They are independent of the community plan update. Excluding those, there's very little parkland being added by this at all. I think the city, the planning department needs to do a much better job of identifying land and identifying amenities to make these numbers real, so we can bring this up to, the value that the city finally said in its Parks master plan we're supposed to have. I mean, really, for this being one of the first community plan updates after the implementation of the park master plan, when they've already reduced the park acreage requirement, and then not to meet the standard is, we just can't accept that. In addition to that, you talked about, you can probably get some acreage, some amenities from the urban parks you were talking about. But according to the city standards, we should have 7 recreation centers. We currently have 3, one of which is shared with Miramar College. Actually, we currently just have 2. There'll be 3 once the one at Three Roots is built. So 4 additional ones are needed. We're supposed to have 3.5 aquatic complexes. Once the pool at the community park is finished, we will have 1.5, because the pool at the college is shared not only with the college, but with Scripps Ranch. So we need 2 additional pools. So where are those going to go? I mean, there's just no mention here of, it's just kind of a hand wavy argument that yes, they're needed, but we don't have any place for them. So I think if we're going to approve this plan, we just have to fix those issues. Those are my comments. So let's see. So I can't see. Okay, Lil, you have your hand up.
Yes. Hi. I serve on the RAG committee and, been learning about the parks. And our homes in Sorrento Valley were built in 1994. And the only park we have is a teeny little overlook park. And it's ridiculous. You guys keep talking about parks and parks and parks, but we have nothing. We have the PQ behind us, which is amazing. But how come we don't have any parks here? The closest park to us is Lopez Ridge, which is probably, if you live on the west end like I do, it would take 45 minutes to walk there. There's no transportation. It's ridiculous. So this really needs to be addressed. Like Jeff said, these little linear parks, or Joe said that and stuff, we don't have anything. So we've been talking about this throughout the whole community plan. And, if you could further look into that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey, Craig Jackson.
Yes, let me make, if you go to your figure 6.1, along the northern periphery there, which is Sorrento Valley Boulevard, you have the one little overlook park that Lil Nover just mentioned. And then you have a couple of similar overlook parks along Calle Cristobal, which are not actually even mentioned. Now, some enhancements can be made. There is, I think, one suggestion of an enhancement that would be a trail down into Los Penasquitos Canyon from the little overlook park off Calle Cristobal, but there is nothing else. Now, a year or so ago, it's hard to keep track, probably even 2 or 3 years ago, Wayne Cox and I looked at a number of areas where there could be some expansion. Now, they won't be parks that will provide ball fields. I recognize that. But down at the bottom of Sorrento Valley Boulevard, at the entrance to Los Penasquitos Canyon, there is land that dirt would need to be moved, but could be converted into a useful park. And I believe it is open space land at the moment, if I recall correctly. There is some space behind that is to the north of the houses on the north side of Sorrento Valley Boulevard, near the little overlook park that Lil mentioned, that is just opposite Sea Point Way. going into Pacific Ridge, that I'm not sure who the owners are of that land. I do know that it was always covered in brush management by Pacific Ridge HOA. That's some space that actually is not going to be a ball field, but it certainly could provide a dog park. It could provide for much more activity related hardware for children. Now it would have to go back be to the north of the houses that are there, but I think that land should be examined to see what the ownership is and what the opportunities are. There would need to be a little bit of fill because I would no longer go through the one small gap that I would go to check on brush management, but there are some opportunities along there. And then I think, as Jeff and Joe have stated, one needs to look at potential locations that would be purchasable land for other parks. And I'll let it go at that.
Craig, that's city-owned land. The Overlook Park is city-owned.
Well, if the land to the north of the houses that are just west of that, then ownership should not be an issue. It's a matter of commitment to a park.
Okay, so we've got 3 hands up. I'll take these in order. Harkey and then Ralph and then Peter Shearer.
Yeah, hi, Alex. I have a question. Can you show the Miramar map, Miramar corridor map first? Page 40 or the slide 40?
Do you see it?
No, page, slide 40.
40, yeah. It's on 40 on my screen.
Yeah, I'm not able to see, but I had a question. What is the size of the park required for the development of the area?
So that depends on the type of projects. So it really depends on how many people will be accommodated with the new development. And maybe Scott can explain a little bit more about the park, what the threshold and how that works.
Exactly,
Because I
yeah.
see this, park, is it just designated on the site more than 2 acres? I have 2.884 acres. So you're showing a location as a park?
Yeah,
the
so
location,
go ahead,
the
Scott.
location, yeah, the location of the park is really conceptual. It can move around depending on what best suits the site conditions. But basically, yeah, the parks are where a site is over 2 acres or the building permittable is over 75,000 square feet, would meet its park requirements on site for the residents in the project. So for example, if you had 1,000, residents, then you'd have 100 park points that would need to be put to that project. And it's a really good question to ask because it illustrates then what next flows into it is that, the Council Policy 633, which establishes how parks get programmed and designed and what the public process is, and lots of the folks on the meeting or have been involved in those, would take place. So just to clarify, right? So it's on part of a project, but the public park features would be designed through Council Policy 633 and through the general development process.
I'm not able to hear well clearly, but it's okay. I just want to go on the record because, so the park, we got to pay higher park fees in order to develop it.
Well, yeah, how it works is if you meet the thresholds to have a big enough project, 2 acres or more, 75,000 square feet or more, the requirement is to provide your park points on site. Your park points would be in lieu of paying 90% of the park fee. So you wouldn't pay most of the park fee at all. You would just go to building on site. And for a lot of developers, they can probably efficiently, as part of their construction process, build the park certainly for quite a bit substantially less than what the city or public processes would build. So then therefore the park fee is typically established based on what the city would cost to build parks. I hope that explains and illustrates some of the topics that you're asking about.
Yeah, before we move on from this one, can I just ask, what triggers all these improvements? You've got the park and a bunch of pathways and things here, trails, but this whole area is industrial with probably 100 different landowners. At what point do these things actually get built?
Alex, do you want to get into what initiates them? I know we kind of went over on the park requirements, what would trigger park facilities to occur and trails and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, it would be incremental, project by project. And the redevelopment applicant can, I mean, ideally for like pedestrian pathways is for them to build it and maintain it. But they could also, dedicate the land to the city to build it at a later time. But because these parcels are large, that, compared to other communities, for example, between Paget and Clayton, really there's 2 property owners that if they decide to redevelop, would build, that segment. And they may decide, actually, we need a street, a new private driveway that meets the city standard. And if they can build the sidewalk, then that would meet the requirement as well. So we're trying to be not too prescriptive, but allowing for some flexibility, and it doesn't need to be exactly at the location that's dotted, but it's based on the parcel lines and the responsibility is shared amongst various property owners. So that's.
Okay. Ralph?
Hi, thank you. Yes, when I was looking at the numbers, I think it was table 6.2, where there could be potentially 100,000 more people added to this community planning area. And my concern is along with Joe, that there's going to be, there's not a requirement to add more community parks, more active fields. So are these numbers telling me that 100,000 more people could be added, but 0 baseball fields could be added, 0 soccer fields could be added? Is that what these numbers are telling me?
No, I guess when you have a large, not all of the asterisks that we've shown have a high degree of a huge amount of area, but you can fit some of those facilities on a smaller neighborhood park size project, or even a mini park size. So, something relatively smaller. So on some of these projects in which you have a, large population, that could be input, whatever the program is at the time, and people who are on the Recreation Advisory Group at that time decide to push for park programming in those new parks that come online. That would be part of the prerogative to say that you really want active recreation.
I think what Ralph is saying is there's no plan in this for 5, 10 or larger acre parks in any of the new plan beyond what's already planned.
Right. Other than, we haven't designed them, of course, but in those CPOS areas where we showed all those maps that had all the different asterisks, green asterisks on that. And some of them, by the way, are fairly on the west as well, not just on the east. So they'd be accessible to the Sorrento Valley residents, the people who live on the west more. But yeah, those could be included in, not all those parks that are asterisks would be small little pocket parks. There could be development in the Mira Mesa region because of the lot size, like Alex was pointing to earlier, that could mean that to build the park points that they have on site, the park could be sizable and could include active recreation to them. Now, having said that, usually I did hear that neighborhood and community park size, very large, 5 to 10 acre parks is definitely something that's desired. And what we've done in the past in the planning department has been to identify a site that is a parking lot or is an auto parts store or something that's currently in use, that we just identify just because we can put a line around it and say, hey, this would be something that we want to acquire here. And my experience has always been, it's typically been 9 times out of 10 that the year after publication, that lot gets sold to someone and begins life as a different project. So we could do that. We could identify underdeveloped properties of different sizes and propose those. I didn't mean to say that when we proposed not providing an actual property to identify that it would be any less than that, but we definitely could identify larger parcels that and describe them as possible future neighborhood parks with active ball fields and other facilities like that.
Well, one of the things that we went through for the last couple of years, I apologize for butting in, but because of Stone Creek and their park design, they're going to have 10,000 people in there, but they will not have any scheduled playtime at all. It's just when you go to the store, you can have your kids in the swing or something like that, but there'll be no scheduled activity at any of those parks. That's 10,000 more people that are going to be pushed on New Mira Mesa now. And, that is a major concern. And the reason we got around that is because when Three Roots came along, we pushed for a 30-acre park to help that problem out. We're winding up with a 23-acre park, which is better than nothing. But to put another 100,000 people in here and not even have a 6-acre park or something, it's crazy.
Yeah, I strongly encourage you to work on identifying such sites. I want to go on. There are 2 attendees who've had their hands up for quite a while, so I'm going to call on them. Peter Shearer.
Pete?
Yeah, you should be able to talk, Peter.
All right. How about now? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for taking the question here. A couple of questions on the CPAWs. The first is, how does the determination here for triggering of the CPAWs with the 75,000 gross square feet or 2 acres compared to what has been done in other recent community plan updates?
So the threshold is very similar to what was proposed in the Kearney Mesa community plan update. They had the 2 acre threshold.
Is that what was adopted?
Yes.
Got it. And what about the 75,000 square feet?
That's, I believe, additional proposal based on land development code threshold, but that's, I believe, is newer. Yes.
Got it. Okay. And then the next question is, a number of these sites that are in CPAWs are large ownership and some are fractional ownership, but either way, they will redevelop piecemeal. So how have you guys thought through the requirements in each of these various areas and how they will be tagged to phased projects?
I mean, can you give like specific examples?
So if you could pull up a CPAWs map, we can work up one of those. So that's a perfect example here, right? So you've got linear pass-through connections, you've got street frontage, and you've got 2 parks that are identified here. The ownership of these different sites are not all the same. And even if they were, they wouldn't all develop at the same time. So how do you guys propose, piecemeal development? I mean, what's going to happen is you're going to have, frontage improvements and pass-throughs that connect to nothing on the other side. So how does that work?
So let's take New Salem Street, right? And let's, 2 parcels or one of the parcel redeveloped. so that development is responsible for creating the first segment of Linear Park. Correct, right? But there's still access with existing sidewalk. So that enhancement, so it would be incremental, unless Bricksmore, who owns the Mira Mesa Mall, decides to redevelop or they sell and somebody comes in who has an experience in retrofitting these old power centers, then they could do it wholesale and they may do master planning. But the good example is the corner of Reagan and Mira Mesa. So there is a new kind of restaurant retail in the corner, and when they redeveloped, they added pedestrian enhancement. So there is a double loaded corridor of trees, for example. So it would be incremental improvements that we like to see.
And what about on like the urban village park concept? Like that's in the middle of a parking lot, right? And so, that site will likely develop in phases. How do you guys think about it? An urban village park and where you've located those asterisks?
So that's depending on the property owners and any large scale residential development. So these asterisks is, again, the park location is conceptual. Where it actually, gets built with new residential is up to the developer, but they have to meet several criteria. It has to be publicly accessible and visible from a public right of way and go through the GDP process.
And so, sorry,
Okay.
where those asterisks are, you said you've worked with those property owners or not?
No, those are just conceptual locations.
Got
So
it.
the triggering of the park is based on thresholds, right? So if 2 acres or greater, if the new residential project is 2 acres or greater or 75,000 square feet or greater, so then that's when it triggers. So these asterisks are just potential locations, but it's just really conceptual.
And the location of the park, of course, would have a lot to do with the phasing of what that project happened incrementally over time, right? So in the development world, you would plan your site planning around, your phasing and where you'd like to put your park.
Okay, we'll
Right.
go on to Brandon Maddox and then Justin Mandelbaum.
Sorry, just one last final question on this one. I apologize for taking so much time. Thank you. Is Alex and Scott, is there somewhere I can find a more detailed list of the CPAWS requirements? Has that been published yet?
Yeah, it's in the community discussion draft. So it's in planmiramesa.org. And there should be a link that if you just scroll down the website.
Thanks, guys.
No problem.
Okay, Brandon Maddox, I don't know if you can speak or not. I don't see a speaker by you. Do you need to, someone need to allow that?
All right, allowed to talk, Brandon.
Nice. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. My question is actually on the Barnes Canyon Road CPAWS group. So I noticed that you guys have, these new pedestrian pathways, new private street connections, kind of going off of what Peter said through private, developments. So how are these going to be implemented for the new pedestrian pathways? Is it a requirement even through ministerial review process? It would just be a review comment that it's required by these developers to input? Are there going to be incentives to do so? I guess just more description on the implementation of these pathways.
Yeah, so the incentive is the ministerial processing if it's followed. If not, then it triggers a discretionary review. So that's the incentive. Now a lot of the implementation is, for example, there is a large scale potential redevelopment along Barnes Canyon where Longfellow, life science developer from Boston, they're planning to develop multiple parcels at the same time. So they could, implement whole scale based on their plan, for example. Or if there's a redevelopment by the Biomed Realty, I think they bought these two buildings, so it's in the corner of their property. It's, it should be fairly low cost improvements on their end. And so yeah, it's a lot of it is incremental, but we really thought the redevelopment potential and how these could get implemented. Yeah. So does that explain?
Yeah, so basically the answer is it's a ministerial review comment. And then if it's not adhered to, and then it would be,
discretionary.
go discretionary.
Yeah.
And then this is going into effect. I'm sorry, when was the date?
End of
for
the
the
year.
CPAS? End of the year.
Yeah.
Okay.
If
Excellent.
everything lines up.
All right, Justin.
That answers my question.
Thanks.
A couple questions, real quick. The trail for Miramar Gateway. You can look at that page 40. So my question is, this looks like with a little more effort, you could make it connected for this new trail, the red dotted line. And I'm sure you guys tried to. I'm just wondering why you stopped where you did.
Which trail?
The new trail SDR6, red dotted line.
Yeah.
Is there no way to connect that fully?
There isn't. Are you saying from Kearney Villa Road?
Yeah.
The access. So the red trail line in Stone Creek this is what they proposed. So we're trying to connect, through it. So the urban pathways will provide that, sidewalk and amenities along the way, I guess. So yeah, that's the
So
connection.
it is connected with basically concrete.
Yeah.
There's no way to keep it. There's no way to connect that otherwise there.
No.
Like there may be an opportunity along the western portion of the CPAS, the bigger CPAS by Camino Ruiz, backside of Stone Creek.
Yeah.
So that's my recommendation. If you guys can look at that, it would just make it that much better to have it fully connected, even if you have to get on the street a little bit, but more trail the better. So that's my one little comment there. The other one is just a general comment about this idea of having a sports complex. And I hear what a lot of you are saying, and I don't know what the needs are as well as everyone else, but clearly it sounds like there's a real need for a real sports complex. And it sounds like you need probably 5 to 10 acres. So obviously it sounds like you are interested in, the city's interested in approaching those property owners. We're one of them that has a 10-acre site. So I'd be happy to talk to you guys. I don't know if it's in the right location, but just one of the ideas is, that it's not necessarily just purchasing of a land, that maybe it's a ground lease. And there's an incentive for the property owner to really work with the city to do a sports complex in lieu of whatever it is that it's getting rezoned for, so that it's, comparable in a way, because most of these property owners are going to go for the greatest return, given what the rezoning is on their property. So you're kind of up against that issue when you rezone a property. And I just want you to consider getting creative on not just the purchase, but working with the property owners so they retain the property and get compensated in some form for retaining the property and working with the city, and make it, really incentivize them to work with the city. And I don't know what that entails and how you would do that, but there's only so many properties in the area that are probably big enough to really house a complex that's going to have your aquatic center and your baseball fields and soccer fields and whatever it is else that belongs in one area, and would be efficient to have in one area. So
Thanks, Justin. I would indeed encourage the city to work with you and your your associates.
Happy to talk.
Barry Vaz?
Yeah, I had a quick question. I believe it's CPAS, that's Mira Mesa Gateway, the area Black Mountain Road, south of Mira Mesa Boulevard. If you could pull that up. Here we go. Okay, so this area on either side of Black Mountain Road where you have new urban village parks notated with new private street connections. Each side of Black Mountain Road is a senior mobile home facility. So my question is, have you made those property owners aware of your thoughts on this? Are you proposing redevelopment of these giant lots into residential? And if so, are you going to request that there's any kind of provision that these must be affordable senior residences? Because we already have a shortage, in addition to just overall affordable housing in San Diego, senior affordable housing. So if these areas are redeveloped and all those folks in the senior mobile home park have to move out, where are they going to go unless we have provisions on these property areas that they have to be redeveloped with these people in mind?
Yeah, so great question, Barry. So these two mobile home parks are already protected. There's an overlay zone. So if there is any redevelopment in the future, the current residents must be relocated and identify new housing. So that's in the code. I don't have the exact language, but so there is that protection provision. But these two parcels, the new land use designation is, I believe, residential, medium, high. So it would trigger some amenities. And the city currently requires 10% inclusionary housing, so some affordable housing for any new development. And I believe some projects, go even beyond that. So we can create more units, more homes. Yeah.
You mentioned relocating. Would they be required to relocate them in Mira Mesa?
No, I don't believe it's geographically based. But I can send you the code language to you.
Yeah, I would have a real problem with that. I'd like to see that, please.
Okay.
Yeah, that is a good point. I've wondered about that too. I mean, that's one of the few sort of affordable areas in the community. It's a lot of mobile homes. Okay, one more attendee question, Jonathan Langford. You may need to make him able to talk.
Jonathan.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thanks for calling me. I appreciate it. My question is about the trigger on redevelopment. I'm with Mira Mesa Shopping Centers. We're the group that manages the commercial properties in the area, like the Target Anchored Center and H Mart Anchored Shopping Centers. Trying to figure out if the trigger is residential only or if it's other commercial or retail uses. Our businesses and our customers are asking about it. They're concerned about kind of the new zoning and if they'll get pushed out or if tenants leave, if they won't be able to be replaced with, other retail tenants. What do you think about that?
So the only threshold is new development. And for urban village parks, it's new residential. But for other supplemental development regulations, if it's a commercial redevelopment, then that would trigger the CPAS. But if you're just, bringing in new tenants to the existing use, that this does not apply. Does that answer your question?
It does, because I think we also believe in kind of the long-term vision of the plan. But like one of the earlier people that were commenting, we were trying to figure out what that meant in the piecemeal effect. If we did have minor redevelopments as tenants moved out and new tenants would move in, they would need to get planning approvals and the like, and kind of implementing the new zoning and design standards, on top of the existing shopping center kind of would break it up in a funny way. And so our concerns were more along those lines and when it would get triggered. And, our preference would be to, wait until it could all take effect when there's new housing that was going to be implemented. And then we could do it the right way instead of kind of picking it off along the way.
Yeah, so there is a mechanism previously conforming in the land development code. So if you wanted to, maintain the current kind of auto-oriented shopping center, then there is a way to go through that and maintain that without triggering the CPOS.
Okay, thank you, Alex. I appreciate that.
Take care.
Good. So I have one more question, Alex. The zoning on all of these isn't actually at the highest density. It's actually a range from 0 to the highest density. So we could be adding 100,000, or maybe 75,000 new residents, or we could be adding 0. How do we plan for that?
So that's the challenge that no one can really know, right? But what we are doing is taking the most optimistic, right, highest growth option and planning for that. Whether that actually happens or not, it's highly unlikely to see all of those parcels redevelop. So that's kind of the approach, but there is no way to know besides Three Roots completing their project and then Stone Creek coming in and redeveloping. Beyond that, it's really hard to tell if the property owners are going to redevelop or not, because as long as their property, their business is profitable and there's less incentive. So take a realistic approach to it. I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, for example, on parks, and we know, not very much has been done yet, but if we're going to acquire more parkland, we certainly will need to if we get even a sizable fraction of the planned population. At what point do we do that? Do we try to anticipate the larger amount? I mean, the worst that could happen then is we end up with too much parkland, which would certainly be a first. But do we try to do the parks, the other public facilities? Do we plan them for a population of 174,000, or do we do something that's incremental, that's planned so that we can grow to that much as the population grows? How do we handle that?
Well, I think with infill development, redevelopment, it's much more challenging to know, right? Because again, Mira Mesa is built out besides several parcels. So it was much easier to know how many units you're going to have, with new development. But since it's all been built out, now it's building up, it's, really challenging to know how many people, Mira Mesa will add. So the strategy has been to utilize CPOS and supplemental development regulations. So for any large scale residential projects in these, village areas, that there is an incentive for the developer to build park on site that they're required to. So that's kind of the strategy. So if it only adds, if there's only 20,000 people, then with new housing, and hopefully the residential developer will build parks on site as they go and redevelop, I guess. So it really depends. If Mira Mesa only adds 50,000 people in the future, then the parks point requirement drastically is reduced because it's based on new people added per community. So it's pretty challenging, to know exactly beyond 2050, even how many people Mira Mesa will add. So again, we're taking the most optimistic, high growth approach to analyze the facility needs. So the deficit may appear larger, but it's based on, again, the most optimistic, growth scenario.
At what point would you say, I mean, there are a number of these that are city provided facilities that are not likely to be provided by developers. So at what point would you add a new recreation center, for example?
So I'll ask Scott to answer that again, but I believe Mira Mesa is in deficit. So Mira Mesa can qualify for the citywide fee to build recreation centers and aquatic centers, I believe. Is that correct, Scott?
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that is what he said before, but we do need to, the thing we don't have is a place to put them. So that's what I would really encourage you and the parks people to work on between now and the next meeting. Okay, I don't see any more questions. Are there any more questions? Not, we're just about to the end of our time here. So Allison, next month, you're supposed to have schools and mobility. I'd really like to see the input on that, the response from the school district, response, the traffic study as early as we can get it before the next meeting.
We'll try to get it a week before.
Okay. All right, with that, I think we're ending right on time. That's never happened before. So we will, let's see, there was one, the next plan update meeting will be before the next, immediately prior to the June planning group meeting, right?
Correct, June 20th.
June 20th. Okay, I will see most of you back here in 10 minutes on a different Zoom for the Mira Mesa Community Planning Group meeting. Thank you, Alex. Thank you all for coming.